The first round of the 2025 NFL Draft is complete, and for the New York Giants, it was really all according to plan. Everything worked out, it seemingly in their favor. Abdul Carter going at number 3 to the Giants. There was a blockbuster trade with the Cleveland Browns and Jacksonville Jaguars, but it really had no effect on what the G-men were going to do as the Jaguars trade up to draft Travis Hunter at 2. And I don't know if the Giants needed to trade back in that high in the first round. I don't think that was necessary, but they do so. They go to 25, and they pick Jaxson Dart out of Ole Miss, the quarterback, which the Giants presume to be the QB of the future. I think this is all a little ridiculous, Alex, and the skepticism that the Giants might have had, thinking, oh, well, they're going to have to be, they're going to have to trade back up to the first round in order to get a quarterback, and they get Jaxson Dart. I feel like this is something at pick 34 they could have gotten.
Yeah, and I think I'd say it like this. Obviously, you have some bonuses the first round. The fifth-year option's huge, assuming Dart works out, which is, of course, a big assumption. And then also the aspect that the Rams were sitting there at pick 26, and it was very likely that they could have been looking for a quarterback to kind of back up Matthew Stafford and kind of transition to that new phase for them at the quarterback position. And Sean McVay was very much rumored to be very interested in Jaxson Dart. So clearly the Giants wanted Dart, and they thought, we got to jump those guys because they could definitely take him. And obviously they didn't think the Steelers were a threat at 21, so they didn't jump to 20. So, yeah, I don't think they needed to. They definitely could have just hopped up a couple spots at the end, probably given up a lot less capital and still gotten the fifth-year option. But I think at the end of the day, they didn't end up giving up that much. The future third next year obviously hurts. But in terms of the pick this year, the comp pick, and then obviously just the number 33, it really wasn't that much to move up and potentially get your future guy.
Well, I don't know. I'm still going to disagree there, and I feel that because of the options at quarterback still available, a.k.a. Shedeur Sanders, by the way, and we'll talk about that, but not getting picked in the first round, he was still available, and I guess the Rams did end up passing on – well, the Giants traded up with the Rams. Is that what it was to get the pick? Because the Rams...
Sorry. No, they traded up with the Texans in front of the Rams.
Oh, and the Rams ended up trading with the Falcons? So you think they traded
Correct.
their pick because you think they wanted a quarterback that badly?
I think probably Dart is who they were planning on taking, would have been my guess. And then they traded back.
Interesting. I listen, I don't like, to be completely honest. Listen, I'm happy the Giants have Jaxson Dart. Again,
also,
I think
not that matters, right? Like, who cares whether they're going to take him or not?
Well, what I was gonna say was that I don't really understand the hype around Jaxson Dart for the Giants. I think you could have stayed at pick 34. Apparently, I mean, I don't think you could have known last night at pick 25, but you could have gotten Shedeur Sanders, it seems like, at 34, unless the team trades up and gets him right bright and early in the second round within the first pick. Or you could have gotten a guy, like we talked about before, Alex, like Jalen Milroe, who I think the upside is higher than something you would see from Jaxson Dart's team. That's just my personal opinion. Milroe, I believe, is younger. Milroe is more mobile. Milroe played at Alabama, so the coaching's elite. And Ole Miss, again, a very good school too. But I just like the upside that was shown from Jalen Milroe more than Jaxson Dart. And okay, Alex, I guess let's go to this now. Shedeur Sanders not going in the first round of the draft. The Giants trade up to 25, and everyone was, thinking before the draft, all right, let's not draft Shedeur Sanders at 3. That's a reach. He's not worth it. But now you're at the end of the first round. It's pick 25, and Shedeur Sanders has fallen all the way to this point. You're going to get one of the best quarterbacks value-wise in this entire draft. And if it works out, you're going to say, holy crap, look at this. Shedeur Sanders fell all the way to 25, and we were able to get him. Now, you can say that about every player that, falls, and if they're great in 5 years. But to pick Jaxson Dart or Shedeur Sanders was definitely a risk, and a risk that the Giants feel like they know the answer to. So, Alex, a little bit more about your opinions, because I know we were talking about that last night, and you weren't too happy.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sanders. I wouldn't say significantly more, but definitely more than Dart. And I think I'll say this, though. As soon as he slid past pick 21 with the Steelers, I started to think, what's wrong with Shedeur Sanders, right? Because
there's got to be something with these the I don't know what the
the
tests,
interviews, right?
the
The
cognitive like
interviews.
I
Yeah.
don't know what it was, whether it's the interviews, whether it's his on-field results, that like the weaknesses, overpowering the strengths in some way. If it's Dion and teams are not scared, but like they don't want to deal with him, there's got to be something there. This guy fell to the second round, and we were talking about mock drafts earlier in the offseason, pre-combine, maybe even post-combine, that had Shedeur Sanders in the top 5. And
Going number one overall, even.
And he didn't get picked in the first 32 guys. So what is going on there is just such a question mark that I think is really significant, and like people want to know the answers to. And I guess the answer is just right now, I guess the interview process, like you mentioned, Alex.
Yeah, there's some sort of issue there. And as soon as he slid past the Steelers, and I think Mike Tomlin is a great judge of character, I think, as we've known over the past, few years or so, in terms of, some of the people he's brought in, and, just his success as a coach. So when he looks at Shedeur Sanders and says no, that definitely, sparked something in my head saying, okay, this great coach and this, very storied organization said no, the Giants probably are not going to be feeling like going with Shedeur Sanders. And I think as soon as they traded up, I had the sense they were going to go with Dart just because of that. And it has been rumored, right, for days before now that the Brian Dable has just been infatuated with Dart, and he thinks Dart is his top guy outside of Cam Ward. So as soon, there's always some truth to the fire. And especially as you're getting closer to the draft, there's the smoke screens and then there's the truth. And sometimes it kind of is wiggling in between each other. But in this case, it was kind of obvious that Brian Dable was a big fan of Jaxson Dart. And, his job's on the line this year, Josh. So he's got to get his guy. Whether, us as Giants fans agree with that. And I think most people agree that Shedeur Sanders is the better prospect out of the two of them. But Brian Dable is still the head coach of the New York Giants, and he thinks, as this QB guru, that Jaxson Dart is the guy that could potentially be an elite quarterback in this league. Then, hey, go for it. And they didn't give up that many assets to get up to go up and get him. So that's kind of my stance on it now, even though I was very frustrated yesterday.
Well, what I will say, and it's good to see, is that Jaxson Dart was talking with the media after the pick and saying he'd be okay with sitting, and he was saying, this is where my journey starts. I'm sitting in a room with a Super Bowl winning quarterback, talking about Russell Wilson, and I think it's just obviously, because if a guy is saying, as like Jaxson Dart is talking about the QB room, and he's like, listen, I'm thinking I'm day one starter, and he comes out and says that, the amount of pressure that the media then puts on the Giants organization, and the pressure that the Giants organization has to respond to that, like, hey bud, let's slow down here. And then you just picked him and you had all your faith in that, and then he's going out here with the attitude saying he's going to start over 2 NFL veterans. That would not be good. So what is good is that he's okay with sitting. He'll develop under these two guys. He's got put. Alex, I will say, GM Joe Shane right now on paper did the right thing this all season in the QB room. He basically, besides maybe us being upset a little bit about the pick and saying it could have been someone else instead of Dart, he did really everything he could possibly do. He signed one veteran in Jameis Winston, signed another veteran in Russell Wilson, and now picks Jaxson Dart trades back into the first round to get him. Now, yes, the Giants did give up some draft capital. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I really do think he's done a good job this offseason. Again, on paper, we haven't seen anything in the product. We'll find out next fall. But, with the QB room and other places on the defense that the Giants addressed, Abdul Carter coming to the Giants, right in that press conference, right after the pick, Joe Shane said they're extending the fifth-year option to Kayvon Thibodeau. Of course, that timing really aligning perfectly, like they didn't know it was going to happen until then. I like that Joe Shane kind of had that one in his back pocket. He was ready for it. But anyways, that's the deal there.
Yeah, and I think Abdul Carter, I know we haven't really touched on him just because it was kind of like a predicted thing that was going to happen. And we did talk about it briefly last night. And I think, yeah, he's an excellent player. He's the best player in this draft class, and we got him at number 3. I think it's as simple as that. And very excited to have him on the New York Giants. I think he's going to crush it in the NFL. Hopefully, I said the same thing about Kayvon, and he's kind of crushed it at times and not crushed it at other times. So I think Abdul Carter, though, is a significantly better prospect than Kayvon Thibodeau was coming out of college. So I'm very excited to see what he can do, and I think he's going to be a very, very special player, and you can never have enough pass rushers. And I'll leave it with that.
All right, Alex, let's go to the I have no response on the Abdul Carter stuff because I don't want to negatively think towards the future. Right now, I feel like with the draft, you have kind of a 24 to 48 hour window where
the draft is fantasy land,
you can be happy with who you have. And then we'll go from there when it actually comes training camp. And then we have Jaxson Dart misses 4 passes in a row with the third team. And then we can worry about it then. Anyway. All right, so the Giants trade a couple of picks. You said the third-round pick next year, Alex. You mentioned pick 34 this year, a third-round pick as well. But they do keep pick 65. However, all the hype was like, oh, my goodness. The Giants had the third pick in the first round and the second pick in the second round. This is going to be a fun draft because they'll be able to get these, really good prospects. And they did, don't get me wrong. But now with the trade, it's kind of like, the second round fun and hype is gone because they traded that pick. So now it's just kind of a waiting game. You were going to see what happens in the second round, and maybe, the Giants would get a really, really cool player. And they did. I don't want to take away that they didn't. They did in Jaxson Dart. So anyway, at this point now, this is a waiting game like it normally is in the draft, but we have to wait about whatever it is, 30 picks till 65 and see who's on the board. Alex, who are you looking for? I would say that the New York Giants at this point now should check out the wide receiver market. I know those guys kind of went off the board a little bit in the first round, but who's left? Jaden Higgins, a player that we talked about, he's going to be gone, by the way. I'm sure by pick 65. You're talking about Trey Harris, a wide receiver out of Ole Miss, Luther Burden III, Jalen Noel, Jack Beck, a wide receiver. I don't know. Who do you think could be available there out of those 5 guys?
I think Noel will be available. The other ones, I'm not sure, to be completely honest. I think I was surprised by a lot of the picks towards the later, I'd say past pick 20-ish, in terms of guys where I thought they were going to go maybe late second round and end up going at pick 23, for example. So I think it's a very interesting class this year, and I actually was reading an article about it, Josh, that within interviews with a lot of GMs that were saying that everyone's rankings in this class are very different compared to almost any other year, where the gap between, say, the Browns evaluation of someone and the Titans evaluation of someone is so vastly different. So trying to predict who's going to be there, is very tough. I mean, I would have placed a lot of money that Amarian Hampton would have been there for the Giants at 34, and he was taken pick 21, I believe. So, there's a lot of things that have been a little bit different in this year's class. I mean, a running back going in the top 6, right? This is not things that we've seen. And I think that in recent years, I should say, at least, I think the positional value proposition has changed. Also now with I guess, success of Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. So I think there's a lot of like shifting, I guess, ideals here in the draft. And I think that's been very interesting this year. I know that does not answer your question whatsoever. I just want to talk about that.
Nope.
But I will
Anyway,
say, I think Noel. Sorry.
If you are talking about running backs, that's a Cam Scadaboo out of Arizona State look in the third round.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I like him. I like the Ohio State backs, obviously, but I'm not sure they're going to be there at 65. Almost definitely not. But I'll say this: I think the Giants could potentially go defensive line again. I think there's a lot of really good players. TJ Sanders, for example, out of South Carolina. I know he'll probably be there. He's a really, really good player. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them double up on the interior, though, of the defensive line, because that's a really strong part of this class as well.
So there you go. Maybe some players to watch out for. Again, the second round preview was really supposed to be. It was a first round recap. Second round.
Yeah, the second round, 2 picks later would have been a lot easier to preview than.
It would have been, yeah. Then we would have known a little bit more about who was on the board then, but it's okay. We can scramble a little bit through as that pick 65. So, hope you enjoyed the first round of the NFL draft for the Giants. It was pretty packed. It was pretty packed, and a lot of stuff happening. A long time that it took, as normal. The draft takes forever, but hope you enjoyed your hours-long watch of it. I certainly did. I was watching it my entire night. I even had it on my phone wherever I was walking when I went mobile. So there you go. And then the second and third rounds are tonight. So I will say, take a break if you need to, because this one's going to be long as well. But it'll be a fun one, and get ready for the Giants to pick. So the draft, I assume second and third round, does that start a little earlier at like 7, Alex, I think?
7 p.m., yeah.
So the Giants will pick around, please, like 11 midnight. I would say the Giants maybe pick around 10-ish. Maybe 9.
Maybe 9. It's 5 minutes.
I know they shorten the rounds, but we'll see. Anyways, everyone enjoy the NFL draft. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Go Big Blue.